full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Thanks for being with us, so really appreciate it. The telephone number 870-275-9799. Carefully crafted appearance of effort. Carefully crafted language, carefully crafted, this is a kind of building off of the carefully crafted language phrase. It was made famous by Governor Asa Hutchinson. We'll tell you what carefully crafted appearance of effort means about an hour from now. Great article exposing the budgetary sleight of hand that can go on in our own state government where you appear to cut spending over here and you just hope nobody. And the average person, quite frankly, is not going to know what's going on in the, esoteric details of, dollars and cents that is the state budget. We will talk more about that in the article right now is up at conduitnews.com, also Conduit for Action, who diverted $1 million in highway money. Who did it? Anyway, so it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, it was Colonel Mustard in the billiard room with the candlestick. All right. The telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the program today. That's 870-275-9799. Also, Facebook.com/Conduit News if you would like to sound off. Also, the YouTube channel. Please go subscribe to it. If you do anything today, if you want to help, Conduit News, you want to help us get to where we want to go, because you appreciate what we're doing here. YouTube.com, Conduit News, and just click that subscribe button and then the little bell to receive notifications. If you can do that one thing, you would help us immensely on this program. Now, got a lot of stuff to get to. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, yesterday I sat down to talk with Dr. Warren Farrell. We'll be listening to him. Gavin Newsom over in California, the governor of California, right? Gavin Newsom has passed a bill or signed a bill that would make it illegal. Get this, Joe. It would make it illegal for schools to permanently suspend people in the 4th and 5th grade for deliberate disobedience or essentially, the type of disobedience where, you guys understand, there's got to be some consequence where you can suspend somebody or even expel them and kick them out of school, But no, not in California anymore. And so we reached out to Dr. Warren Farrell, having him on the program because he's the author of this book called The Boy Crisis. And essentially we have all these terrible symptoms in our society. And it really comes from a broken family, broken home, a lack of fathers in the home. We'll talk to him about that coming up at 6:30 this morning. And then we've got from the Family Council, next hour, the Family Council's Ken Yang will be with us. Always great to talk to him. There is some disturbing information being circled around about what's going on in China when it comes to their one-child policy. There's a new documentary out that's even waking up a lot of leftists because in China people have forced abortions. If you're going to have that second kid, they'll come take your land, they'll come take your livestock, they'll even abduct you from your home and come and take your baby and kill it. Sometimes they take your baby and they put it in an orphanage, and then that orphanage is going to, their allegations, you're going to be sold. And by the way, Arkansas's political establishment appears to want to do business with these people. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Look at what they're doing versus, we've got 6 communist Chinese party deals going on in Arkansas, and look at what they're doing. We'll talk to Ken Yang just about those atrocities there, because this is really kind of circulating. Also, there's another article out there in that the lead-in case over in California, where people are admitting in court to doing terrible things. There's one pro-abortion doctor. I'm sorry. There's one abortion doctor who has recently admitted that they just snip the vocal cords so the baby can't scream. They're like, babies don't scream. Besides, she's tweeted this. She admitted this. Babies don't scream. Besides, I snip their vocal cords so they can't. Sick stuff. All right, we got all that and much, much more ahead. We got state news to get to. A lot of state news. Matter of fact, Senator Jim Hendren is back in the news. The governor's nephew. He is now back at it trying to tax vaping products, riding this wave, this national wave that, I mean, it's the next Red Scare, I guess, right? I mean, vaping, right? Smoking tobacco in a new way is somehow a huge national health crisis all of a sudden, and we need government to step in and take care of our kids where parents are failing. And so Senator Hendren is there trying to tax something 68%, and we'll see what the vape shops say. We're going to reach out to them. But interestingly enough, State Representative Lane Jean, who's a budget guy, came out and said that the money, if it is passed and they increase the taxes on vaping, Senator Hendren already tried this once and it failed, that it needs to go to Medicaid because health care costs because of Medicaid are skyrocketing. And I think people, I mean, that's why we're paying $70 million in taxes. That's why tax increases. That's why on October 1st, the state of Arkansas is going to be paying more at the pump because we have these Medicaid costs. By the way, I thought this was all supposed to be sustainable. I thought the establishment Republicans were going to make big government better. They're going to run big government better than Democrats. I thought that's what they were going to do. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Interesting admission. Also, kind of a shot of, I don't know how you interpreted what Joe Jett said in that story, State Representative Joe Jett, but I don't know if Joe Jett and Jim Hendren are friends. I'm just trying to read the subtext, right? You guys know what subtext is, right? It's an art form. It really is. Here's some national news for you. Wall Street may get $40 billion reprieve from the Trump administration. Bloomberg is reporting that Wall Street could soon get one of its most consequential wins in the Trump era as regulators are considering ripping up a rule that forced banks to set aside billions of dollars for swap trades. Also has to do with, if you're engaging in derivative transactions. Now, most people don't know what that is. I could try to describe it to you, but I think I would even get some of it wrong. But it is an incredibly, if you research derivatives, incredibly risky. It's been known, especially from the left, incredibly risky thing. Now, the left is going to obviously tell you, well, this is the president unhindering the banks, and so we're going to rocket down, closer to another financial crisis similar to what we saw in 2008. I'm not quite so sure. The Dodd-Frank Act, it was the Dodd-Frank Act, right, in 2010. This was Obama and the Democrats. It's the Dodd-Frank Act, you know what I mean? And it certainly is something that, has put banks under, there's more regulations. Just more regulations. And so they're saying that the FDIC announced last week that its board would meet September 17th to vote on a swap margin proposal without providing any further details. Banks have to have essentially all this money set aside over here if they're going to engage in risky investments. That's the premise. But people are saying, this is $40 billion. Again, $40 billion is what it cost them essentially to do this, to comply with these regulations, to set this money aside. And they're saying because of the president, Wall Street may be very, very happy. Who knows? We'll see. I'm sure if that is the case, we will find out really soon from the people like CNN and MSNBC how it's some sort of Russian collusion, Saudi Arabian KKK axis of evil that's making all of this happen. Yeah, that's right. The new axis of evil, the new axis powers is now Donald Trump, the Russians, Saudi Arabia, and the KKK. They're all the same, if you believe the criticism. Here's another story. There are now new details that have emerged in the smear of Brett Kavanaugh. I told you about yesterday that happened over the weekend. We were kind of summarizing the weekend. Brett Kavanaugh obviously is on the Supreme Court now, and the left can't stand it. The New York Times, though, and this even made, if you were reading the Gazette this morning, this even made the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, where if you only read the first couple paragraphs, it actually makes the New York Times look awful. Because they come out with this story, and they fail to put what a lot of people are calling exculpatory evidence in the piece. A new allegation. A woman says something. Brett Kavanaugh did this to me one time in college. But the woman actually doesn't. It's somebody that knew the woman. The woman doesn't remember the incident and has refused to be interviewed. And the New York Times leaves that out of the story. Over at the Daily Wire, though, the plot has thickened. Because if you see this, the authors of this story, Robin Pogregbin and Kate Kelly, listen to this, Joe. Did you hear this? So these New York Times journalists, they say, well, actually, we originally, when we submitted this piece to the editor, this attack on Brett Kavanaugh, we left in the part that said the woman has no memory of this allegation and has refused to be interviewed, and some editor at the New York Times just decided to take out the story. Take out that part of the story, and so then they had to add it back in. Isn't that so sad? And listen, these New York Times, quote, journalists, they go on Lawrence O'Donnell's show last night, MSNBC. Listen to this. Scroll down. Go ahead and listen to this, because they're still kind of defending their bosses by saying things like, the reason we didn't put this in the story, the reason the editor took it out is because we were trying to protect the identity of the woman. Oh, yeah, right, sure. Go ahead, just real quick, listen to this little excerpt.
Draft of the article, did it include those words that have since been added to the article?
It did.
It did. So somewhere in the editing process, those words were
Yeah,
trimmed.
I mean, I think what happened actually was that, we had her name, and the Times doesn't usually include the name of the victim. And so I think in this case, the editors felt like maybe it was probably better to remove it. And in removing her name, they removed the other reference to the fact that she didn't remember it.
So the way in your draft for the Times,
so we're supposed to believe that, right? Okay, you could have removed, but you could have removed the name and still said, "Hey, the woman doesn't remember this." The unnamed woman that we won't name, the woman that the Times chooses not to name, doesn't remember this, and doesn't want to be interviewed. Last night in New Mexico, the president held a rally. Last night in New Mexico, the president held a rally. He's trying to turn New Mexico red, and he slammed the New York Times, man. He slammed them. He said a bunch of stuff, actually. And if you really want kind of a encapsulation of what the president said last night, he celebrated the Latino supporters that he has, the Latino support that the president enjoys, according to polls. They want the wall, he said. He said that rhino Republicans during his presidency are, quote, gasping for air. Wow. Now, who would have thought? I'm just saying, I just want to take a moment to tell you how wrong I was about the president of the United States during the primary, what I thought. I had very little faith that he would actually attempt to do some of the things he was saying he was going to do. There was a huge trust gap that I had with the president, but no more. I'm not saying that he's perfect or anything. I'm just saying on his policies and the fact that he's still standing up saying rhino Republicans are gasping for air. The idea that a sitting president of the United States who's remaking the Republican Party is now calling out Republicans in name only. You have any idea what a big deal that is in the executive branch of the United? He is calling out rhinos, which only encourages those who have more rhino tendencies to to get in line, with what Republicans actually say they stand for. It's just incredible to me. That statement alone is incredible, that we have a president of the United States calling out rhinos. And then, we have people in our own state here in Arkansas, where when the grassroots calls out rhinos, you get ostracized and you're not a team player and blah, 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 blah. Well, the president of the United States last night said that rhinos during his presidency are gasping for air. So, take that for what it is. He also said that the New York Times will never recover after their latest Kavanaugh smear. And let's see, radical Democrats want to eliminate God-given right of self-defense. And also, Trump last night demanded that the Democrat National Convention, they need to hold an open borders convention in 2020, because right now their convention is going to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, because they really want to take Wisconsin. And they are now building a wall, he said, around the convention site. And he says it needs to be an open borders. In New Mexico last night, Latinos for Trump signs were pervasive. President Trump said the left wants to erase American history. And he also mentioned the Mueller report and how it was authorized by 18 crazy Trump haters. And he vowed to turn New Mexico red. Anyway, in the meantime, on the other side of the aisle, Democrat, I'd say front-runner Elizabeth Warren, she's out there saying Americans are killed by fossil fuels and the gun industry. So now it's the gun industry, fossil fuels, the KGB, Saudi Arabia, and the KKK. The axis of evil, man, is just getting larger and larger. In the Democrat mind, anyway. We're going to be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. It's just Conduit News. We got a great show for you. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Back in a moment. Folks, want to welcome back. We've got a Republican from Independence County. Charlie Fuquay is back with us. Charlie, how's it going, sir?
Good. I'm sitting in my office and waiting to come on, and as I sat here, a whole gaggle of geese flew overhead, and I am reminded how blessed we are to live in Arkansas. It's just such a beautiful place.
You're right. It really is. It's beautiful. Whether you're in the Ozarks or whether you're in the Flatland. It's so amazing the different types of environments you can find here in the state. Absolutely, I agree with you there, Charlie. Hey, couple years ago, you guys all these county committees have dinners. They got Reagan Day dinners. They got Lincoln Day dinners. I think you're the only one, Charlie. Independence County, y'all are the only one that you guys do a Trump Day dinner now, don't you?
I think maybe up in Blytheville.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Let's see here. Woods on Facebook sounds off. He says, sounds like Trump lumps rhinos in with the liberal Democrat Party. Oh, Woods, it's a little too much truth. You got to be careful. Got to be careful with stating the obvious sometimes to people in positions of power. You know, like, I don't know, the fact that Arkansans are going to be paying a lot more in taxes has to do with the fact that Medicaid expansion was never properly dealt with by Republicans because it's ticking up, and their estimates were all wrong. Yeah, it'll cost us about $50 million in 4 years, and it costs us $130. Yeah, that's a problem. Hey, check this out. In keeping with the left's anti-comedy push, I mean, I'm telling you, they cannot stand this, and they're trying to make an example out of this new guy. His name is Shane Gillis. SNL, Saturday Night Live, that I'm sure many of you don't watch. They hired him and then they fired him because they hired him and then they went back and they found that there were some jokes that he told, anti-Asian American jokes, homophobic jokes, and so he cannot be on SNL because he said those things and he's a white man. Daily Wire canceled Shane Gillis fired from SNL over past offensive jokes. And his response was this. He said after that's SNL's. Hang on. He said, "I'm a comedian who was funny enough to get on SNL. That can't be taken away. Of course, I wanted an opportunity to prove myself at SNL, but I understand it would be too much of a distraction. I respect the decision SNL made. I'm honestly grateful for the opportunity. I was always a Mad TV guy anyway." He also noted that it feels ridiculous for a comedian to have to make a serious public statement. But this is the world we live in. This is the world the left wants us to have. It's a totalitarian world of thought where you have to agree with everything that somebody says, and there is no room for disagreement, or you will be ostracized, and you will be singled out, and you will be essentially shunned, or I don't want to say, not literally, but you just can't exist in public life. Let's just put it like that. So, interestingly enough, Breitbart picked up on this. There are plenty of sketches that you can go back and watch that SNL did, Saturday Night Live did. They couldn't be made today. Matter of fact, there's a lot of Seinfeld episodes. I've gone back and watched those recently. They are hilarious. The writing is brilliant. And yet, a lot of these episodes couldn't be made today because they're not with the Me Too or the politically correct culture. Does anybody remember John Belushi, Saturday Night Live in the Samurai Hotel when he was making all those noises? See, I'm not even supposed to do that. Also, the ambiguously gay duo. Remember that? So the ambiguously gay duo was actually voiced by Stephen Colbert was one of those gay guys, the ambiguously gay superheroes. Oh no, that's homophobic. Then you have, remember, Julia Sweeney's Pat. You didn't know if Pat was male or female. They had entire sketches. I was like, well, she would do those things where she wouldn't know. You wouldn't know if she was male or female. Remember that? Then you had Billy Crystal dressed up as Sammy Davis Jr. in a Ronald Reagan sketch. And then a bunch of other ones that, remember the Chippendales audition with Chris Farley and Patrick Swayze. Couldn't do that anymore. That would be fat shaming. This article's up at Breitbart.com. It's pretty funny. Back in just a moment. Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. Conduit for Commerce is an Arkansas-focused nonprofit organization which receives no government funding. Its core beliefs are economic freedom, individual liberty, and limited government. Conduit for Commerce believes those principles are foundational to all individual freedoms and promotes these principles by educating Arkansans and your elected state officials concerning good government policies that will create a better life for all Arkansans. These traditional conservative values have proven throughout history to lift people from poverty, achieve individual desire, and assist in the pursuit of happiness. Conduit for Commerce operates on the basic belief that these principles and ideals of the American founding are worth conserving and renewing at each generation, especially today. Conduit for Commerce accomplishes this work only through the support and interaction of small businesses as well as individuals. Conduit for Commerce thrives from like-minded Arkansans' participation and partnership. It's only through the support of folks like you that Conduit for Commerce is able to be the conduit to the Arkansas State Capitol. Help us continue as Arkansas's primary small business policy entrepreneur through your financial support. Join us by visiting conduitforcommerce.org. Once you're at the site, click Support Our Cause at the top of your screen. Your one-time or monthly donation will directly impact Conduit for Commerce's mission to promote liberty and economic freedom in Arkansas. Together, we can build a liberty machine. That's conduitforcommerce.org.
They did a Trump Day dinner after us.
I think you're right. Mississippi County. Yes, sir.
And I think that's due to a lady by the name of Dorothy Crockett.
Yes, she's fantastic.
And people that know Republicans will know that name. She is just the finest lady you could ever meet. But ours was first. And anyway, we're having another Trump Day dinner. It's going to be February 11th. It'll be at 6 p.m., and it'll be at the Batesville Community Center. And if you'd like to come, we're inviting all the constitutional officers, all of our federal representatives. And I just want to say a little bit about Independence County. And Batesville's the county seat. It was not very many years ago that we were a pretty solid Democrat county. It was a rare exception when a Republican got elected to any office.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Good morning to you. We got a special treat back on the line, back on the program. We have Dr. Warren Farrell back with us. He is, of course, the author of the great book, The Boy Crisis, Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It. Dr. Farrell, welcome back to the program, sir.
I'm looking forward to being with you again.
Yes, sir. It's always a pleasure. I've got this article here in front of me, and, you know, this was, I guess, back on the 9th. So last week, a new law signed by California Governor Gavin Newsom is banning schools from suspending disruptive kids. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's a problem, basically, because on the one hand, if schools are really prepared to handle the disruptive kids, that's one thing. But that we're a long way and away from doing that effectively, and so if the disruptive kids go home, as you know was possible in the past, there is oftentimes problems without having a father at home, without having discipline at home, and so keeping them at school is good if you have good opportunities at school for the kids. So, for example, I talked to Barbara Nemco. She's the superintendent of schools at Napo County, and she said it's more effective if their kids are in a separate room that they're sent to a separate room where they're with other kids and they're handled effectively there, that there's discipline there, that they're expected to do their schoolwork there, and then in addition to their schoolwork, they have other discipline times and they're taught postponed gratification. All of this is handling things. When I did the research for 14 years for the boy crisis, one of the things I found was that what happens at school is secondary to what happens at home. The boy crisis resides where dads do not reside, and so when you have no father at home, and then a boy goes from a fatherless home to a school without male teachers, he has no constructive male role model to guide his testosterone as he gets, especially into teenage years where the testosterone is extremely high. And testosterone that is poorly guided or not guided at all becomes the world's most destructive force. Testosterone well guided by a good involved father with a combination of love and discipline who sends his child off to school where you have good male teachers and good male role models as well as good female teachers and role models, that boy has a much greater likelihood to do well. So we're sort of we're addressing the problem at the symptom end. And at the symptom end, you're never going to find, fantastic solutions. What I'm doing now is working with the White House and the Department of Justice and HHS, the Health and Human Services Department, to try to get programs that solve the problem at the root. So, for example, the dad-deprived children, a significant percentage of them come from homes of divorce. Homes of divorce often occur because when men and women, or men and men, or women and women, when people who love each other are raising a family, and there's all these enormous complications, and they're communicating with each other and criticizing each other's style or way of parenting, it's the Achilles heel of all human beings is our inability to handle personal criticism without becoming defensive. And so that inability leads to arguments and people not understanding each other, and people, therefore, men and women walking on eggshells. And even if they stay together, they're often in minimum security prison marriages. And so whether they're being in a minimum security prison marriage or being in a broken home is not good for children, but especially it's not good for children to be in a broken home, and especially it is not good for boys. When I'm saying it's not good for boys, I mean boys do worse in 70 different areas, 70 plus different areas, when they don't have a significant amount of devoted father involvement. And when I say 70 different areas, I mean everything from depression to suicide to obesity to addiction to video games to addiction to porn. You name a parent's nightmare, and those are more likely to happen, not inevitable, but more likely to happen when there's a minimal amount of father involvement. So if you want to solve the problem at the cause end rather than the symptom end, we really need to pay attention to that cause, the divorce that leads to the children without dads. And if we want to stop the divorces and bring about good marriages, we have to have parent communication training and also children communication training in elementary schools, so boys and girls learn how to communicate with each other rather than bully each other in the case of boys usually, or do other forms of more subtle meanness toward each other in the case of girls usually.
So I know we're talking with Dr. Warren Farrell. He is the author of the book, The Boy Crisis. I'm going to talk about that book and remind you about that book here in a minute, but Dr. Farrell, what you're essentially saying is that we've got to focus on the family, and that the family is breaking down. We're seeing it degrade, essentially, and it was the backbone, and I think still is, of our culture. It has to be. But, this article, again, Gavin Newsom on Monday signed a law that would permanently prohibit willful defiance suspensions in grades 4 and 5. You're wanting to tackle, the root of the problem, but I don't think there's a lot of, I think you saying that this is a family issue is the truth, but it may not be politically correct to say that anymore. Do you kind of get the feeling that folks in California would maybe say that this is not politically correct to suggest that this is why we're having a problem?
Yes, my research does not say, do not go there, Dr. Farrell. That's politically incorrect. I try to go. I've gotten into huge amounts of trouble by just following what the research tells me, and then also what my experience is with, like, as I said, talking with Barbara Nemko as superintendent of schools in Napa County and other educators, there is so many people out there with a lot of experience, plus my own personal experience helping to raise children. I try to put all of that together and say, okay, what works. Now, let's say we have to take it at the symptom level, and the bill you're referring to is Senate Bill 419, and this is it does exactly what you say, and it does it in both public schools and charter schools. And
Wow.
That is also a problem because charter schools usually have fewer boys with significant problems. Their parents tend to be more involved. They tend to be able to be a bit more self-selective. But nevertheless, if you want to address the issue in schools, some of the best ways of addressing it are, number one, make sure you have a significant number of male teachers. And I don't just mean men like myself. I tend to be sort of a nurturing type of guy. But you need men who are like me. You need men who are more traditional men, like a firefighter or a construction worker, so that no matter what type of boy you have a boy who is who has a role model of a man that he can identify with, and I can identify with him, and give him a sort of a sense of purpose and help him redirect himself. We're improving with the vocational school level. The children that willfully act up, they tend not to be academically oriented. They're ones that are not comfortable sitting in their seats, taking notes, memorizing the notes, and feeding that back at the next test. But those boys are often very good at doing things. We've gotten better with vocational education, particularly in California, in the last few years, but we have a long way to go. And we saw the warning for this when Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, looked at the future of economically, and he said the two biggest problems we have economically are cyber warfare and the crisis that our boys are in.
Wow.
And saying that this is going to lead to boys who do not have their energy channeled well through things like knowing how to do something that bridges the gap between their skill set and the challenges of AI, of artificial intelligence. This is what the schools need to focus on, is making sure that boys have the way of getting the skills to do that. One of the things I found doing the research for the boy crisis is that a lot of boys don't have an interest in academic stuff, but let's say physics and math and chemistry. But if you tell them that the highly paid welders, the ones that get well over $100,000 a year, they know enough physics and enough chemistry to be able to be sophisticated in their welding and get the higher paid jobs. When a boy has a goal in mind, if I do this, I can be a welder, he's far more likely to get his act together and study the physics and the chemistry in order to be a good welder. So boys are very goal-oriented as a rule, especially boys that are not academic boys. Boys want to achieve and they want to have purpose. But if you don't have the school, if you have the schools totally focused on college educations, that is good for many boys like myself, but it's not good for boys that are not academically oriented, and we've been failing to address those boys, not only in vocational education, but in recess. Boys need to be physically active before they learn.
Yes.
And the Centers for Disease Control has found that when boys and girls, interestingly, are engaged in recess, the times engaged in recess and physical activities are actually more productive for studying effectively for a test than additional minutes of studying for a test. So studying is helpful up to a point, but beyond that point, being physically active and stimulating yourself to be receptive to new ideas that you're learning actually comes from a significant amount of recess integrated with the studying.
I mean, as I listen to you talk, and I mean, I get the feeling that you believe that, having the strong traditional masculine presence in our society is the backbone of our society. Again, politically incorrect thing to say. What do you think the phrase? How do you respond when I say that use the phrase toxic masculinity?
Yeah, a complex response that I have to that. So there are aspects of masculinity that can become toxic when boys bully each other, when they are sort of constantly exaggerating. But the mistake that feminism has made is to associate that toxic masculinity with male privilege. That toxic masculinity did not come from male privilege. It came from male sacrifice. Throughout every generation has had its war. And with each war, the parents and the society has sort of made boys into heroes if they prepared to be disposable in that war. In order to be or be disposable in the hazardous jobs in the workplace, the firefighters and the construction workers construction workers in the United States die at one per hour in the United States, and so we prepare boys to be disposable as a definition of masculinity. But in order to be disposable, you have to discount your feelings. You have to cut off from who you are. You have to develop heroic intelligence. Heroic intelligence is preparation for a short life. It's in contrast with health intelligence, which is preparation for a long life, which both physically and then emotional intelligence, which is preparation for being able to deal with the subtleties of human emotions, to express your own emotions, but not to take them too far, to be other-centered as well as self-centered. Those are things that are all important skill sets. Throughout all of human history, we have focused in the development of our sons on heroic intelligence. As a result of male heroic intelligence, we are not speaking German under Nazi rule. We have been saved from enormous amounts of crime. We have the fires in California have been put out by the firefighters, who are well over almost 100% males in the voluntary area, and about 95% males in the ones that go up there to fight the fires. And so we have an enormous gift that heroic intelligence brings to the country. But we have to say, when our sons are 8, 9, 10 years of age, do we want to be pushing our sons into doing things that are where they get purpose and they get to be called hero and they get the social bribes of the culture by calling them by having them risk their lives? Or do we want to open our sons up to a wide variety of options, multiple senses of purpose that are more matched toward their personality, and not shaming them if they don't become a Marine?
Of course,
but also,
yeah.
And that type of thing.
Well,
So
but it also comes back to a dad. I mean, if we have a lot of broken homes with no fathers, a lot of times, you're taught by your dad how to behave. How to be a man.
Exactly, and here is the challenge, and it's a very subtle challenge. When children are brought up predominantly in mom-dominated homes with minimal or no dad involvement, the child is usually protected very well, nurtured very well, and the mom says, "Sweetie, you are really good at music, or you're really good at being an actor, or why don't you go ahead and pursue that?" However, what the dad tends to bring to the family table is discipline, and he brings that discipline through enforced boundaries. And so the father is far more likely to, father and mother will set boundaries the same way. They'll both say, "You can't have your ice cream until you finish your peas." But moms will the kids, of course, will challenge that and try to have as few peas as possible before they have their ice cream. Moms then tend to, especially in a divorce situation, feel guilty about being divorced, feel the child's under a lot of stress, and say, "Okay, I'm not going to get into a big argument over a few peas. So I'll tell you what, sweetie, you have a few more peas and then you can have your ice cream." Dad is far more likely to require the child to finish the task. And so the child who's required to finish the task, to finish the peas before she or he gets the ice cream, is far more likely to develop postponed gratification. the children with postponed gratification are able to complete their dreams. They're able to rehearse for the play, rehearse for the drills that are needed for football or for basketball, and to finish their homework without getting distracted. Those are the boys and girls that succeed. So successful boys and girls tend to have the boundary enforcement, not the boundary setting, but the boundary enforcement that leads to the postponed gratification that is the greatest predictor of success. And so when that element is missing, the element of the father, the discipline, the postponed gratification, when that's missing, boys are encouraged by their mother to have a dream, but they often don't have the discipline to fulfill that dream.
Wow.
And after a while, they become afraid to dream because they know the next dream will just lead to another failure, and they'll be ashamed about that. So they begin to withdraw into video game addiction, withdraw into vicarious dreams being fulfilled. And when it comes to boy-girl time, the girls are not interested in dating losers, so they date. So the boys feel that they're going to be rejected because they will be usually, and so they turn to porn. And porn is basically access to a variety of attractive women without fear of rejection at a price that they can afford. And so then the porn addicts them to getting more and more exciting situations with girls and women because they don't, then the girl or the woman who actually begins to get involved with them feels like they're treated like an object because they're being treated like an object,
exactly.
And then they withdraw. They withdraw from the guy. The guy is convinced that that he's a loser, so he goes back to the porn, and the cycle repeats itself. And so this is the and I've only scraped the tip of the iceberg here, but this is one of maybe 9, 10 significant differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting, and why the children who do the best have what I call checks and balance parenting.
Wow, that's fascinating stuff. We're out of time, Dr. Warren Farrell. I really appreciate your work on this. I want to encourage everybody to, first of all, share this video with your friends, as well as check out your book, The Boy Crisis, Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It. I think you've gone over a lot of those answers here today on the program, so really appreciate it, Dr. Warren Farrell.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking with you again.
Oh, as always, we'll have you on again soon. Have a great day, sir.
Look forward to that.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
sir.
As we talk today, there is only, from President Trump down to the Office of Justice of the Peace, there is only one Democrat representing Independence County, and he's a Justice of the Peace. And after this next election, I hope that there isn't a single Democrat representing Independence County.
I saw where...
So
go ahead.
We've come a long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys have. A lot of Northeast Arkansas has as well since, President Obama was elected in 2008. Speaking of the Democrats, I think I saw where Senator Ted Cruz came out and said that President Donald Trump has broke the Democrat Party. It really is amazing to see how radical these people that are now still calling themselves Democrats have become, isn't it?
It is. It is incredible. Maybe our county was carried by Donald Trump by 70%. And as I just walk around and maybe wear a MAGA hat, people will just tell me how much they love Donald Trump and how crazy the Democrats have become. And it's amazing how crazy they are. You know what? Other than Islam, socialism has murdered more people than any ideology on planet Earth. And the Democrats are saying, oh, that's what we want. And they have totally forgotten history.
Yeah, and there's even an ad, I think, that was running during the Democrat debate last week that a Republican group put out. And, they got a little bit of heat because it started with a photo of Ocasio-Cortez wanting socialism, and then there was a fire that burned through her face, and it actually showed the skulls of Cambodia, and there was a survivor, whose dad, went through all that, and she's now in America, and she's now safe. And, of course, the tolerant left responded by going after that woman, and she's now receiving death threats from, all the people trying to defend a guy. But, I mean, to your point, socialism is certainly something, communism, whatever you want to call it, it is something that has taken the lives in the 20th century of, over 100 million people? Can we say that?
I don't know the number, but it's a lot. You talked about Cambodia. I just happen to have, right in my neighborhood, a woman who is a immigrant from Cambodia. And, she doesn't have a lot of use for socialism or communism. She lived that hell. And, I mean, that's what it is.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, first glimpse. This was interesting to me. I saw this over the weekend. So the headline here over at TBP, Talk Business and Politics, first glimpse into new Walmart health format. So Walmart has announced that they will be venturing further into the healthcare industry in terms of healthcare services. Like right now, obviously Walmart, they've got pharmaceuticals locked down. They have a pharmacy there. Many of their, if not all, of their supercenters have optometrists, opticians. They've got an optical unit there where you go in, you get your glasses, you can go in and get an examination, and that sort of thing. So that's a big deal. And so now they're venturing even further, and they want to build or attach clinics, actual health clinics, that will deliver primary care, labs, x-rays, EKGs, counseling, dental, optical, hearing, community health, nutritional service, fitness, and health insurance, education, and enrollment. This is the future of Walmart from what I can tell. And it says that they're going to do this by partnering with local providers. So you would assume that if you're already a primary care provider, or you're in, kind of already a big system or conglomerate, that Walmart's going to put, maybe this hospital that is already established, partner with them and use their professionals, or let them hire the professionals, but it will be Walmart's health service. And there's a lot of, I was reading some of the comments on this. A lot of people were like, oh, this, sounds like a good thing. This would be great. And people love Walmart. Let's be honest, right? They love the service that they provide. I like Walmart. I like their prices. I like being able to go to Walmart and get food, a hunting license and ammo, although the ammo thing is going away. I don't like what Walmart's done, caving to the anti-gun movement. But, we also, and this used to be something that people talked about universally, but Walmart hurts the mom and pop stores and everything else. And when Walmart was for the internet sales tax, that was funny, because all of a sudden Walmart they were buying into the phony argument of, oh yeah, give more money to the government and it'll help small businesses. It'll help mom and pop. It's like Walmart claiming to stick up for the mom and pop. It's kind of weird. Anyway, so I had a friend a long time ago, and we talked about a ton of stuff. I would go by his business, and we would kind of chat. And one of the things that this acquaintance of mine used to say was that pretty soon you're going to just do everything at Walmart. And he predicted this like 8 years ago. And he was saying that it makes him uncomfortable that you could go to that everything's Walmart, right? That eventually, you go to Walmart and you go to the doctor. Well, where are you going? Well, I'm going to the doctor. You go to Walmart. Where are you going? I'm going to the pharmacy. You're going to a Walmart. And he was saying that makes him uncomfortable in terms of it all kind of being consolidated. The same thing with Amazon, trying to eat up all of the online retail, right? if that were to ever happen, and then Amazon could just, they can operate at a loss here or there, and then eventually they can just raise the prices. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a mixed bag, but when I saw this headline, I thought, wow. Thought of my friend. I said, this guy predicted this a long time ago.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro.
And so, people that know what it is, but what the problem is, our educational system has brainwashed our youth. And they think socialism is some great thing where nobody has to work and the government gives everybody everything free. And it can't work that way. Hey, I want to talk a little bit more about this dinner.
All right.
I went to another, I think they called it a Reagan Day dinner. It was in Sharp County, and Tim Griffin was the keynote speaker. And he is going to be the keynote speaker at our dinner. And one thing he said at this dinner that really impressed me, he talked about all the great electoral strides that Republicans have made in Arkansas. And basically, we own this state. And, I mean, that has been a turnover that has happened really quick. And Tim said, the people have given us their trust. But we can lose that trust. And we have a party platform that is really a great party platform. But we, elected officials and Republicans, need to follow that platform. Because there was a Democrat model in this state, and the Democrat model was tell the people that you're for them, but sell out to the lobby.
Yes.
And the problem is that I am seeing some Republicans say, hey, that model worked really good for the Democrats. Why don't we jump on board with that? And, it did work good for the Democrats, but it also cost the Democrats everything in the final analysis. We need to follow the example in government of a man by the name of Jesus Christ. And I just want to say something about that example. He, who was clearly the head guy in his group, washed his disciples' feet. He was the servant king. As a matter of fact, he served like no one else has ever served. He was willing to die for the people he served and die a horrible death. I remember one time when the disciples were arguing over who was the greatest among them, and Jesus told them, let he who would be great among you become the servant of the others. And he not only said that and taught that, he lived that. And if we don't make that our example as Republicans, we will lose that trust that the people have given us. And I think that is so important that we never lose sight of where we've come from. I know I talk too much, but I got to say this too. Here's the goal of what I'm going to call the left, the elite, whatever you want to call them. Our Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by government with their inalienable rights. Wait, did I say something wrong there?
Yes, you did.
It's by their creator. And they want us to forget where our rights come from. Because if our rights come from government can take them away from us. But we must never let government convince us that our rights come from them. Our rights come to us from God.
I'm so glad that you're saying that. We're talking with Charles Fuquay from the Independence County Republican Committee, and he's talking about this Trump Day dinner they're going to be having February 11th, right? Right, Charles?
Yes, it's at 6 p.m. at the community center, and I want to say this. tickets are sold in advance. If you show up that night, you're not getting in.
Well, I mean, we got a lot of time to buy tickets. It's middle of September, so we're going to have you back on when we get closer. But I wanted to touch base with you because I always enjoy having you on, and I especially love what you just said there about how our rights are not a dispensation from government. There's a lot of people. I mean, for example, you take the Second Amendment. A lot of people now believe that the government allows us to have guns, and they're just ignoring this fundamental concept of this God-given, creator-given right to self-defense.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Here we go, 870-275-9799. Thanks a lot for being with us today. We can't do the program without you. I told you at the top of the hour, we'd love for you to go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you do anything to help us, go to YouTube. If you have a Google account, like a Gmail account, and then you are logged into that account and you go to youtube.com, you'll automatically be logged in on YouTube because YouTube and Google, they're the same. I know. And I remember when the internet, I like YouTube. Go and subscribe. It would really help us out. Subscribe and click the little bell to receive notifications on YouTube. But you remember when the internet originally was, you can do anything. You know what I mean? Like, well, not anything, but it was, oh man, the internet, it's decentralized, right? To some degree it still is, but who would have thought that the internet, where it's decentralized, you got this and you got that, and yet you get this big company that buys up any new company that's innovative, and then it just keeps growing and just keeps being, and now it's all Alphabet, the company Alphabet. It's pretty much it, or Amazon. Alphabet or Amazon. That's kind of scary. Anyway, conduitnews.com, carefully crafted appearance of effort. Who in the world diverted $1 million in highway money? This is a great piece. It's up at Conduit for Action as well as Conduit News. And this is interesting because there's the part in the article that talks about the carefully crafted language. And you've kind of got to understand the little bit of esoteric budgeting here, how you may have the appearance of cutting spending, but in reality, that's not what's happening, right? So last year, you'll remember there was an article, and it was right before, I believe it was right before the session is when the article came out, but we learned that the Highway Commission, Arkansas Highway Commission, they gave away $1 million to the University of Arkansas at Fort Smith to help build a building, an engineering building. A lot of people thought that was really, really in bad taste, considering that they were talking about raising our taxes to fund roads. Do you remember this? Like, we got to have more money. By the way, October 1st, we're going to be paying more money at the pump to fund our roads. It was kind of in bad taste, though. The highway department, they're always acting like that they got to have more money. They're always moping around like, oh, we don't have enough money to fix our roads. You'll have to excuse me. I'm just trying to have some fun here. But that is kind of what they always try to say, right? Like, we just can't do it with the existing budget that we have. And so, but then they turn around, they give $1 million of our money to the University of Arkansas, Fort Smith, to build a building. We'd rather you be building, roads, I mean, I don't know how much it would be, but I mean, I'm sure $1 million would buy at least some sort, significant amount of asphalt, Anyway, some people were mad, but they weren't mad enough to not increase your taxes and make you pay for, more roads, even though they're being irresponsible with our money. Here's from the article. Some legislators blew off the diversion, saying the legislature doesn't have any control over the Highway Commission. Now, some people want to change that. But this article says that that's not actually true. The idea that the legislature doesn't have any control over the Highway Commission or the Department of Transportation. Conduit for Action wondered how the diversion was possible since highway funds are levied and collected for highway and road needs. A Freedom of Information request asked the Department of Transportation for details of the transfer. What we learned surprised us. Number one, it was the legislature and governor, not the Highway Commission, who diverted the $1 million away from potholes and diverted it to grants to colleges. Number two, the role of the Highway Commission was only to determine who would get the diverted money. So this is a big development. It's changed. It wasn't the Highway Commission. It was the General Assembly. Documents provided by the Department of Transportation cite the authority for the grant of the $1 million to the University of Arkansas is Act 705 of 2017. Among other things, the act created a new fund called the Future Transportation Research Fund and diverted $500,000 per year of interest from highway revenues to use for grants to colleges. And so they did that in 2017. The legislature did that in 2017, and then they come back to us in 2019, and they raise our taxes to pay for roads. Yikes. Yikes. So who got the money? Well, you get to apply. The legislature created a new government program. And so now colleges, also funded by taxpayers, get to apply for grants totaling $1.7 million. $1,714,876. The University of Arkansas got the entire million. The fact that the University of Arkansas got all the money makes it very likely that the governor had the transfer of the money to the University of Arkansas in mind when the special authorization was passed. Now let's get to the bold portion of this, because this is what you need to know. Why divert money from highways to fund a U of A building instead of funding it directly from the general revenue? They could have just given this money and if given it via general revenues. Why do it the way it was done? Because the governor pretends he is controlling spending by limiting the increase of general revenues. To carry out this deception, he shifts spending to other funds like the highway funds. It is another spending deception. And thus, why our board this week says carefully crafted appearance. It's not even carefully crafted effort. It's just the appearance of an effort to cut spending. But it's actually sleight of hand. How can they legally divert money levied and collected for highways? The answer is technically they didn't actually grab the money levied and collected for highway needs. Instead, they went after the interest received from holding your highway tax money. They went after the interest. Talk about carefully crafted language. Carefully crafted appearance of effort is what this is. So, check out the rest of the article. What do you think about this? It all goes on to mention that in 2017, when they passed this new piece of legislation to set up this new government program to divert highway funds to colleges, what is going on? By the way, can I say something else about the colleges? This is a big problem. I saw 3 articles in the last week. University of Arkansas enrollment down. The enrollment's also down over at A-State, and the enrollment is also down at UALR. Okay? What's going on with that, right? I mean, have the university, are we now going to see a crisis in the universities where they don't have the money to stay afloat? And then the universities are going to be used as pawns to raise even more taxes? Because I have to tell you something. I think that these universities, in many cases, have priced themselves. They're just not competitive anymore. or they're just too expensive. And they're probably, when I say they're not competitive, they probably are competitive when it comes to looking at, how much it costs to go to one school versus another school. But I will just say, I think the student debt crisis is I think you have more and more high school juniors and seniors that are actually starting to look less at the college experience and more about what it is they're going to do to pay off this debt that they're being asked to consider taking on by going and having a college experience for 4 years. I think there's more students, this is just my hypothesis, that are thinking, yeah, I'm not going to buy your product because I don't see why I would want to be in that level of debt when I'm 21 years old or 22 years old. Now, tell me if I'm wrong here, but the student debt crisis right now, you have a lot of these high school sophomore, juniors, and seniors that know, or maybe they have brothers and sisters that have already gone through college, and they're coming out with all this debt, and they're hearing their family like, wow, so-and-so's got all this debt. And I think you've got people making informed decisions. And the reason they have all this debt is because the government is guaranteeing the loans. And the government guaranteeing student loans in colleges, by the way, gives the colleges no incentive to worry about whether or not the deal is a good deal for these kids by keeping tuition low. There's no incentive there because the government is guaranteeing you're going to have customers. Now, that may not be the case. I mean, we may be starting to see a trend where people are like, you know what? I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to do that. I'll do something else. Or I'll save up my money by working a job, and maybe I'll go to college when I'm 19 or 20. Or maybe I'll go to a 2-year school and then transfer over, because these 4-year colleges with their general education requirements, that is a scam, folks. That is a scam for the most part. You have studied these general education requirements in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. You've already taken this material. But no, you got to pay the university again to make sure that you know how to write an essay. Folks, if you don't know how to write an essay and you're a freshman in college, that's an embarrassment on the education system in this country. That's an embarrassment. And a lot of people don't know. Anyway, let's see here. Let's get to the end of this article. So the lead sponsor of the Senate bill that started this government program to give money to colleges was Senator Jake Files, who, in an unrelated, obviously he resigned and pled guilty to felonies for fraud. He was the head of the tax committee, wouldn't pay his taxes. The House sponsor was Representative Andy Davis. Andy Davis recently announced, by the way, that he's not seeking re-election. You can see here up at Conduit News how your representative voted on this particular. And I bet some of them didn't even really know what they were voting on, because this is such a small amount of money, and yet it set up a whole new government program to pay colleges and this is what's interesting. I mean, if you go back and you read the original Conduit for Action article, we thought that this money was going, that the Highway Commission had independently acted to give the Fort Smith, University of Arkansas Fort Smith, the money to build their building. We thought it was just, fiat or executive. The Highway Commission is its own constitutional thing, right? So, but that's not the case. It was the legislature that passed a piece of legislation that created the fund to take the highway money and give it away. Man. And in this case, it's a taxpayers helping taxpayer institution. Really, really strange. Check it out. It's up again, Conduit for Action, conduitforaction.org or conduitnews.com. Check it out. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's reset. I'm going to take a break. When we come back, I want to tell you about vaping. In case you didn't know, it's like the next big thing. It's a crisis. Vaping is a complete and total crisis. There are kids who are using tobacco. There are kids who are not 18 and they're using tobacco. Have you ever heard of such a thing? Well, you know what? You know what we need? We obviously got to have the government step in and do something about it, because this is a new problem. Back in a moment.
Rights come from government. Government can take them away from us. But we must never let government convince us that our rights come from them. Our rights come to us from God.
I'm so glad that you're saying that. We're talking with Charles Fuquay from the Independence County Republican Committee, and he's talking about this Trump Day dinner they're going to be having February 11th, right? Right, Charles?
Yes, it's at 6 p.m. at the community center, and I want to say this. Tickets are sold in advance. If you show up that night, you're not getting in.
Well, I mean, you know, we got a lot of time to buy tickets. It's middle of September, so we're going to have you back on when we get closer. But I wanted to touch base with you because I always enjoy having you on, and I especially love, you know, what you just said there about how our rights are not a dispensation from government. You know, there's a lot of people. I mean, for example, you take the Second Amendment. A lot of people now believe that the government allows us to have guns, and they're just ignoring this fundamental concept of this God-given.
Good morning. Good morning. Congratulations, you have made it to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, where we strive to offer politicians the very best in ambiguously specific language, the purpose of which is to allow our politician bosses to grow government and keep their constituents in the dark. This yields two beneficial outcomes. First, the government-growing politicians stay in office, and second, we at the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language get to remain in the shadows and get to keep our jobs. Now, it's time for technocrat training drills. Johnny?
Yes?
A politician wants to use the healthcare system to punish those who have and redistribute their wealth. What is the appropriate language to use in this situation to make an unpopular idea acceptable to the public?
I would emphasize that these ideas would make their healthcare more affordable and make sure the public understands if they already have adequate healthcare, nothing will change for them.
Very good, Johnny. Much progress since last time. Next up, let's have Susie. Susie, your politician has been caught in, dare I say it, a lie.
What kind of a lie?
It doesn't really matter, but in the spirit of the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language, I will give you a good hypothetical scenario. Dozens of politicians have been thrown out of office for supporting a socialist health care program. So the remaining politicians get together and they pass a bill to, quote, end the program, end quote. But they really want to keep it. What should they do, Susie?
May I ask a question for more information?
Certainly.
Has the word lie been used by the political opposition?
Yes.
I know. They should change the name of the program. Maybe use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, 870-275-9799. That's the telephone number. So we have now, appears a bill has been, circulating around there. Senator Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew, he is the Senate President pro temp. He has drafted legislation. He wants to once again attempt to tax vaping products here in Arkansas at a very, very high rate. Now, this is on the heels of the vaping industry coming out a couple of weeks ago in saying that they want to be taxed at 2%. They would like a 2% tax on their products so that they can keep their doors open and also give the government what the government's looking for, which is more money, right? A lot more money. And the vaping industry narrowly escaped being taxed at 60-something% last time when Republican Jim Hendren proposed, with all the Democrats behind him, or a lot of Democrats behind him, proposed to essentially increase the tax on vaping, hurting small businesses, if they also pass an earned income tax credit, which is something that Democrats and liberals have been trying to pass here in Arkansas for a long time and keep failing to do it. And so it was really odd, and it went nowhere in the House. It did pass the Senate, but went nowhere in the House. So you've got this bill here, publicized a draft bill that would raise taxes on electronic cigarettes and bar their use in places where traditional cigarettes are. So it would amend the Clean Air Act, where if you can't smoke a combustible cigarette in this place, you can also no longer smoke a vaping e-cigarette, as they're called, e-cigarettes. Quote, the potential harm to our children's health makes it imperative that we act with urgency. The health department reports that vaping among teenagers is at epidemic levels, and minors who use e-cigarettes are at risk for contracting severe lung disease. This, of course, is also riding the wave of the Trump administration and them wanting to ban flavors. You know, the Trump administration announces their regulations on vaping, and tobacco stocks go up. Go figure. Meaning the companies that own these vaping devices, they go up. Quote, I've circulated a draft bill among legislators, and I'm encouraged by the favorable response. Now the question is, when will the legislature have the opportunity to consider it? And they're talking about maybe a special session. Hadn't had one of those in a while. Or maybe passing it during the fiscal session. The draft legislation would tax vaping products at the same level as non-cigarette tobacco products. So in Arkansas, if you buy a pack of smokes, it's going to be $1.15. Other tobacco products are taxed at 68% of the manufacturer's invoice selling price. Currently, e-cigarettes, if you want an e-cigarette, you're only going to pay the standard sales tax. So they want to tax this at 68%. They want to tax these vaping products at 68%. Wow. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. If you scroll down here, you get to Representative Lane Jean's comments. Representative Lane Jean, when asked to comment on where the new revenue would come from, because this is a lot of money that would be coming into the government if they start taxing vaping, assuming that these vape shops don't go out of business overnight. Representative Lane Jean says he'd like for more study to be done before he supports Jim Hendren's bill. Jean, who is co-chairman of the Joint Budget Committee, opposed the bill Hendren introduced during the session earlier this year. Jean said he is concerned that too high of an e-cigarette tax could put Arkansas retailers at a competitive disadvantage with those in surrounding states. 15 states, including Louisiana, Kansas, have approved excise taxes on e-cigarettes in recent years. Well, then that's what a so you have Lane Jean. What a novel idea. He's actually thinking about what this does to the economic freedom of small businesses who have opened up vape shops. What a good idea. By the way, that is a really healthy mindset to have. Not just for the vape people, but in all small businesses. Anytime the government taxes something, they're discouraging the behavior. They need to realize what that's going to do to people's livelihoods who've invested in it, who are delivering a service or a product that people want. Newsflash, people have always smoked under the legal age. And there's not any more laws that's going to stop that. Whatever they do, there's still going to be kids that are going to vape. Anyway, goes on. Gene also said, listen to this, he'd rather see any additional revenue from e-cigarette taxes go toward offsetting health care costs. Hendren's bill during the session would have used the revenue to offset an earned income tax credit for low and middle income earners. Lane Jean of the Budget Committee, quote, "We're going to need it," noting that health care funding, that the state's Medicaid spending is rising annually. That's pretty interesting. Maybe that's what this is all about in the first place. We need to tax vaping at 68%. It's the one thing that they didn't get done that they apparently wanted to get done. And I think we all know why. Because even though we're facing a $70 million net tax increase this year, it still isn't enough because we're in a budget crisis. Creator-given right to self-defense, to self-preservation. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here. And when you really think about it in terms of that, it's our God-given right. And the answer to the left, when we are being shot at by lunatics in our society, the answer to the left is to make it harder for us to get weapons, or they want to confiscate them, as Beto O'Rourke has now said. And there are now Democrats, Charles, that are coming out and saying Beto O'Rourke really stepped in it. He should not have essentially let them know what our plan is, which is gun confiscation. Yeah. And now we're not going to get anything done because of what Beto O'Rourke has said. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if they passed a law that all guns had to be turned in, I'm sure all the criminals would obey that law because they obey all laws, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd. You know, I've got some guns. I've got some guns that they want to take away. But, you know, I have never in my life, and I'll be 70 in a few days, I've never shot anybody. And, you know, I don't have any plans to shoot anybody unless it's in self-defense or defense of others.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's insanity. I don't know any other way to look at it.
It really is. Well,
but you know what? The world is rebelling against this. You know, we look at the Great Britain exiting the EU. This whole drive for a one-world government led by the elite. The people of the world are rebelling.
And, you know, you look at what's going on with Hong Kong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they certainly wish they would have a Second Amendment right now. I mean, really, seriously.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And, you know, that is really a sad situation because Hong Kong is probably the most economically free place on earth. And China wants to absorb it into that with that communism. I don't know what else to call it. But
are you surprised? I think it also, you know, there's a lot of biblical Christians in Hong Kong that are, you know, they're more free over there than certainly on mainland China, where they're tearing down churches and forcing the church to go underground. And you know, it's very, very sad when you think about what our brothers and sisters in Christ are going through over there.
Yeah.
So,
you know, I wish I could, and if anybody knows, let me know, but I wish I could understand whatever relationship there is between the international bankers and China today. Because, you know, the international bankers want everybody on planet Earth to be their slave. And in China, basically everybody's the slave of the government. You know, I mean, they give a degree of economic...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, good morning, everybody out there. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Folks, I want you to welcome back to the program. We got from the Family Council here in Arkansas. Mr. Ken Yang is on the line. Hey, Ken, how's it going, sir?
Yeah, good. Thank you for having me back on.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you. And just wanted to have you on to talk about the issues of the day. First of all, let's talk Family Council. People can go to familycouncil.org if they want more information about the work you guys are doing. So what's up? What's going on with Family Council right now?
Oh, well, we're just keeping an eye out, you know, on whether there's going to be a special session or not, because we've been talking to people about hate crimes legislation, and we just want to make sure that that doesn't also sneak up on us. and then just preparing for the election cycle where we do our voters guides and we ask, where people stand on issues of life, religious liberty, guns, taxes, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Well,
bad stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds busy. and in terms of watching out, for special sessions, that's the thing, sometimes those can be tricky, even though there are, defined parameters before a special session is called. A lot of times, there can be things that are done, language that slipped into this bill that has nothing to do with maybe the title that can have a lot of, different effects, different outcomes. And so, yeah, there's and I didn't really even realize until I read in the paper this morning that there were kind of whispers of a special session, but that appears to be the case. Anyway, so I know you guys got your plate full right now.
Yep.
So Ken, what did you think? We talked about this article. There are a lot of people apparently on the left who are waking up to China's one-child policy, and this is in the context of what Senator Bernie Sanders said when he said that to control the weather and fight climate change, women need to have more abortions. Did you see that?
Yes. Well, and first of all, and not just Bernie. I mean, let's just be honest. Every single Democratic candidate running for president in every single debate, they fail to ask the question about life, and they fail to ask that hard question of, basically every single candidate supports the killing of unborn babies. And most of them support the killing of unborn babies all the way to term. And so it's just disgusting. And in regards to China, I think many of your listeners know my family story. When I think about when Senator Sanders is like, oh, that'd be a great idea, I'm thinking, well, thank goodness, my dad fled communist China because I'd never be born. He'd have my brother, and then that would be it.
Wow.
Or if they did have me, they would either my mom would have been forced to have an abortion, or they would have been forced to kill the kid kill me after I was born. We often talk about the awful number, anywhere from 50 to 60 million of aborted babies in the United States. That number in China is over 400 million.
Wow.
And that's the type of policy that people like Bernie Sanders would support. Not only 50 million dead babies, he wants to increase that number.
Well, I mean, he was specifically talking about, the concept of using abortion to control the population because that would somehow help the climate of everybody else. And what he doesn't realize is, that's the link you're making is that's exactly the philosophy that the Chinese have been carrying out on their citizens for a long time, not to control the weather, but just to control, they got a lot of people over there and they have limited resources. And there's this new documentary, and it is shocking people on the left in a good way. It's a new documentary called One Child Nation, and it explains how this whole thing, this one-child policy has worked. And this one article I'm reading says Bernie should actually watch it before proposing population control as a solution to, global warming or climate change or whatever. But that's, I think, a positive thing, Ken, that there are people on the left who apparently watch this documentary and they can't stop talking about it because they are absolutely appalled and disgusted about rounding women up in the middle of the night who are pregnant and are basically in possession of an unauthorized baby.
Yes. Let's be clear. In the aspect of China, it's the government that's forcing these women to have abortion. The majority of the Chinese people over there in China, they want to have multiple children. They want to have more than one child, and it's the Communist Party who goes and kills these people. It's the government that goes and kills these unborn children. And that's what you see on the left is our candidates that are supporting communist, socialist type policies of killing children.
It's to say barbaric is is an understatement, and I don't understand why more people don't talk about these horrors. I mean,
well, look, and I think the reason why I want to say that is, in the Chinese culture, when you are born, you're actually 1 year old.
Okay.
You don't start at 0 like here. And I think if you think about that even further, that's that culture from a really long time ago where that is life at conception. Why else would the child be 1 year old if they didn't believe that was life? And that's a small part of the Chinese culture in Taiwan and even in Japan and Korea, where they do that also. That doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, and that just dawns on me that back to what Bernie Sanders said. He actually said, if you read his whole statement, that there are women in developing worlds that are having more children today than they want to have, and I think that whole premise is false. I don't think that's true. And just like you were saying, that there are these women are being forced to do this in China. They're just like us. I mean, they're human beings, and they love their spouse, and they want to have a family. They want to continue to have a family because that's the natural human tendency. That's our urge. We want to reproduce ourselves.
Yep.
And so it's so. The whole thing is so frustrating. I want to ask you about the current president. I mean, given your family situation, the president of China. Given your family situation, them being able to escape, that communist rule, what do you think about President Xi Jinping basically appointing himself as president for the rest of his life?
Well, I listened to your show, and I know you talk about China a lot. And it's sad that more people do not talk about China. And I follow foreign. One of my biggest love is foreign policy, and especially in the aspect of China. And President Xi Jinping is. I tell people all the time, when he became president, he is the closest to Mao Zedong, since obviously Mao Zedong himself, and that is scary. And people don't see that. You saw the kind of natural progression to the history where you start thinking, well, maybe China is having more capitalist policies. Maybe they'll move in towards that eventually. But the current President Xi Jinping, has put that to rest. He eliminated every single one of his opposition when he became president. And he took over the army quicker than what most incoming presidents do. And we see the policies that happen in Hong Kong. We see the policies of the more aggressive policies of trying to take back Taiwan than we have in years. And then we see the aggressive policies of coming here to the United States and stealing our intellectual property, coming here and infiltrating our society. And they're loving the fact that the liberals' attention is towards this Russian hoax because they just get to come on and walk in and do whatever they want.
Wow. Yeah, I had never thought of that, that specific diversion. But yeah, you're exactly right about that. But it's got to be a little bit. It's been encouraging to me to see what's going on in Hong Kong. Obviously, the situation itself is an overall negative, but the fact that the American flag to those folks still means freedom. It means what is now. It never used to be politicized, like the Bill of Rights. There was a time where that wasn't a political issue. It was something we all agreed on. Over in Hong Kong, the American flag stands for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the right to assemble, and they're waving the flag because of that. That's encouraging.
Yeah. Well, and then they see a president that actually stands up for the American people and for American policies, and not only does that, but has actions to prove that. But at the end of the day, I struggle. I tell people when I do talk about China, I think it's the media age. We get to see it on TV more. People can capture it more. But I struggle to think that anyone would come to the aid of either Hong Kong or Taiwan if China had ever decided to take those two by force.
Yeah.
And so, I see the presidential candidates talk about, well, we got to, keep them accountable and work with them. And it's just like that sentence alone shows their lack of depth in foreign policy and the idea that they're just going to somehow keep China accountable and also still work with them. It's a joke.
Hey, Ken, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir. It's always great to talk to you, and look forward to doing it again sometime, or soon, actually.
Sounds
right.
good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ken Yang, everybody. You can find out more about the Family Council. Again, it's familycouncil.org. They also put out, every now and then, they put out these videos when there's something that has happened related to the social issues that they follow, the traditional family values that they promote. They'll put out these really good videos that are kind of little short 1-2 minute clips and updates about what is going on. So definitely check that out up at familycouncil.org. In keeping with this discussion on China, this article jumped out at me for a couple of reasons. This is from The Atlantic. The Atlantic says, headline, Hollywood's Great Leap Backward on Free Expression. Now, many of you might think, well, of course Hollywood has a great leap backward on expression because there's certain things they can't talk about. Dave Chappelle calls them the alphabet people. Can't talk about the LGBT, RSTLNE, would you like to buy Val community. That's not what they're talking about here. Hollywood's great leap backward on free expression in this article has to do with the fact that they're collaborating too much with Beijing and the Communist Party. The subheadline, Beijing moves to co-opt the American film industry as it seeks to penetrate the world's largest market. And it talks about how this kind of started, where you had essentially the Communist Chinese propaganda department trying to infiltrate American films. Now, I told you that movie, The Meg, I haven't even looked it up, but there's no question that movie had to have been paid for or in collaboration. It's about the megalodon, Jason Statham. The Chinese were involved in that because the last half of the movie took place off the coast of China, and you'd have thought that you were watching a Beach Boys movie, from the 1950s, and everything was great, So that's certainly happening, but apparently this has gone back and forth for a while, but Hollywood is losing more and more autonomy the deeper they get involved. Now, think about that for a second. The deeper you get involved with China, the less freedom you have, okay? It has a little piece here about bookstores in Hong Kong are nearly, how they're diminishing. Today, these bookstores are gone, along with nearly all of Hong Kong's independent publishers. The courageous men and women who struggled to keep them alive have been effectively silenced. There was, crackdowns from this. We're still waiting to see, the results of that. Skipping down the middle here. Over the years, the U.S. government has often praised and defended Hollywood films as a key component of American soft power. That is, a storytelling medium that can, without engaging in blatant propaganda, convey American ideals, including free expression, to foreign populations around the world. This is a big deal. But Hollywood has long since abandoned that role. Indeed, not since the end of World War II have the studios cooperated with Washington in furthering the nation's ideals. Instead, the relationship today is purely commercial on both sides. And it says that things are different in China. In that country, which is fast becoming the world's largest and most important movie market, the ruling Communist Party exercises no such restraint. On the contrary, Beijing has a very clear idea of how a film industry should operate, namely, as an essential part of the effort to bring public opinion in alignment with the party's ideological worldview, and they have come to Hollywood to help them do it, just like Google is helping China build the prototype for the American surveillance state that is to come. There were huge headlines, and the article talks about this, that China is involved in the upcoming sequel to Top Gun with Tom Cruise. They replaced the patch right? The Taiwan patch. They took it off because China doesn't want the Taiwanese flag on the jacket that was there 20 years ago, all right? Talks about how censorship, Hollywood's active role, is kind of colliding here with the Chinese censorship. Hang on, we're going to skip down here a little bit further, because eventually what we find out is that there was that movie with Matt Damon. Do you remember the movie with Matt Damon that was called The Great Wall? Do you remember that? It was out. That was when he was kind of supposed to be an Asian guy. I don't think they could make that movie today because people would be like, cultural appropriation. Let's see. When was that movie? Let's see. No, they talk about it here in this article. Let's see here. The Wall. And by the way, I mean, here, The Great Wall. That's what it's called. 2017. Okay, 2017. You had Beijing and Hollywood working together, right? They were trying to influence us here in America. It was a $150 million flop, starring Matt Damon and other Chinese bigwigs in their film industry. And at each stage, the American producers received a greater share of the revenue. Listen to this process. The Great Wall was the third stage in a process by which Hollywood went from exporting U.S.-made films into China to co-producing films with China in America to co-producing films with China in China. And at each stage, the American producers received a greater share of the revenue and submitted to a greater degree of control by the Chinese authorities. That's the point I wanted to get to. You start to do a little bit business with the Chinese, then there's a little bit more, and eventually you are less free. That's how it works in really a lot of financial relationships. So Hollywood went from exporting U.S.-made films into China to co-producing films with China in America to co-producing films with China in China. They get more money because the Chinese, they don't care about money. We'll come get all your money when we're ready for the takeover. So I say all that to say this. Combine what we know is going on with the propaganda arm in Hollywood. What's going on in Arkansas? We know that they're buying agricultural ads. They're writing op-eds that are being placed in ag magazines here in Arkansas to make the president look bad on the trade war. That's what China's doing. And then you look at their one-child policy. And this headline, Stephen Mosher, I witnessed in China the population control policies Bernie Sanders wants for America. And it's barbarism. It's absolute barbarism what these women are going through. Some people on the left may be starting to wake up. And what are we doing? What is the political leadership of the state of Arkansas doing? We're trying to do business with these people. That's what we're doing. We see what they're doing in Hollywood. We see what they're doing to their own people. We see how they're tearing down churches. We see what they're doing to Hong Kong. What's Arkansas doing? Arkansas's political leadership, we want to do business with them. We are actively pursuing to do business with them, not just trade. Arkansas's political establishment wants to bring the Communist Chinese Party here in 6 separate deals. I am claiming the moral high ground here. Yes, I don't understand why our government here in Arkansas would pursue what is increasingly becoming an indefensible policy. Back in a minute. It's very, very sad when you think about what our brothers and sisters in Christ are going through over there.
Yeah.
So.
I wish I could, and if anybody knows, let me know, but I wish I could understand whatever relationship there is between international bankers and China today. Mm-hmm. Because, the international bankers want everybody on planet Earth to be their slave. And in China, basically everybody's the slave of the government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they give a degree of economic freedom if it profits the government, but they'll take that away from you in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And it just seems like this model of the elite controlling everybody is the model the international bankers have, and it's what China has. And,
well, yeah, it's very interesting. Well, let me get your comment on the fact that Arkansas has, 6 deals in the works with Chinese Communist Party entities. They call themselves companies, but we're trying to give away taxpayer dollars and incentives to bring 6 Chinese companies into Arkansas. And I just, I think it's a big no-no. Like, I think it's a terrible idea. But for some reason, people think that it's perfectly fine. And, I mean, I think it's a Trojan horse. What do you think?
well, here's my take on this. Trade with China has been a disaster for the United States. We don't need China. You know, we can make all that stuff ourselves. Now, it may take some time because we've let our industries die. But we need, I don't think we should deal with nations that don't give their people economic freedom. I don't think we should deal with any of the, like the Ayatollahs and all those people. I don't think we should deal with China.
Interesting. Kind of like a, I don't know, to use a Star Trek reference, kind of like a, well, if you want to get into the Federation, you've got to, meet these criteria, or we're going to, ignore you. Sorry, I couldn't help it, but Star Trek, I'm a Star Trek nerd. Hey, Charlie Fuquay, we appreciate it, sir. Go ahead one more time. Tell everybody when this Trump dinner is going to be, and we appreciate you coming on.
It's going to be February 11th at 6 p.m. at the Batesville Community Center.
All right. And tickets you got to get them beforehand. And so, obviously, I'm sure there'll be candidates setting up tables and organizations having tables there as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we appreciate it, Charlie Fuquay. We appreciate you coming on, and hope you have a great week, sir.
Okay, thank you. You have a good day.
And happy early birthday. Folks, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. 870-275-9799. Oh, man. State Representative Brant Smith just posted on our Facebook page. Joe, ready for this? We lived in China for a number of years. The policies you're talking about were horrendous, and I witnessed them firsthand. There were so many instances where local nationals had lost heart and had faces of hopelessness. If you're just joining us, we're talking about China's one-child policy. Earlier in the segment, we had Family Council's Ken Yang on, whose parents are from China and escaped, and how if you heard Ken say that if they'd have stayed in China, he was the second born, he wouldn't have been allowed to be born. He would have been aborted. I mean, think about that. It's absolutely insane. Now, we're going to get to our meme of the day. I will tell you this. There's this other meme of the day. Or there's this other meme that is really funny. I just wanted to, it's Beto O'Rourke, and they're sailing. He's sailing in the boat with a bunch of Democrats, and it says gun control on it. And Beto O'Rourke takes a gun and just shoots a hole in the boat. Because he said that they're gonna confiscate your guns. I thought that was pretty funny. Hey, here is the meme of the day, courtesy of, is this the touchdowns ones again? This is fantastic. It's really a slam. I guess in keeping with the tradition that the president slammed the New York Times last night, big time. Well, this meme is slamming CNN. 4_touchdowns on Instagram. Has a picture of Beto O'Rourke next to Zimmerman, George Zimmerman. Remember the guy with Trayvon Martin? And it says, CNN be like, George Zimmerman is white, but Beto O'Rourke is Hispanic. That's really, really funny. Hey, folks, I want to know what you think about vaping. Do you support Arkansas Senator Jim Hendren's effort to try to tax vaping at 68%. I mean, you know, is it a crisis? I don't know. Are kids doing it? Yeah. Do we really know the full effects of vaping? Maybe not. But do we need the government to get involved? Is it really about compassion, or is it really about that money, that revenue that you're going to get? Because I personally think that if your kid is vaping, then it's your responsibility as a parent to, well, what would my dad say? Jerk a knot in their tail. Arkansas, be safe.